Hey guys, welcome back to the Psalms to God YouTube channel. This is not really like an official episode. We're not talking about anyone in particular or any topic in particular. I just finally got around to updating the journal that I use for the series. When I first made it, which I'm pretty sure the video of me making that journal is up on the channel somewhere, I used like this old method that I used to use for how I was making my journals. And when I used to do that method, basically I would just kind of glue the paper onto like a chipboard, and the glue that I used wasn't necessarily the best glue ever. I think I was using like glue sticks to keep it from like puckering. And then I would just use like laminate film over it. And the laminate film that I use is really cheap. So while like the glue managed to hold a lot of those notebooks, I noticed that over like a year or 2 years, the laminate would start to peel up and it was not really the most aesthetic thing. So a lot of those notebooks I have started to like, decoil and then redo the cover and then put them back together. And this is one that has been bothering me because I use it for this particular series and it's really fragile right now, or it was fragile. Um, so I finally sat down and decided to make a new cover, and I decided to film it. I did lose my camera near the end of this, so I'll end up just inserting a final picture at the end. But I got most of it on camera. Um, and so I figured I would film it and just kind of talk about how I did this and what I was thinking while I was doing it. Um, I wasn't sure what to put on the cover, and I have a lot of like watercolor paper and some watercolor brush markers that I don't have a lot of practice with. And so I decided I wanted to try to paint a picture. I'm not the best when it comes to like art. Like I can doodle a bit, but like some YouTubers, I watch them and they just have this the most beautiful art in whatever style it is that they do, whether it's realism, whether it's cartoony. Um, and I'm always just like, oh, I wish I could do that. But that's not really my forte. I think, practice makes perfect, as they say. So I figured I'd give it a go. So I went with something fairly simple and did just like the sun in the background with a rainbow for, God's promise to mankind. And I then, colored in this blue sky. And I knew that it wouldn't look particularly outstanding, and that, of course, this has no rhyme or reason with like what women of God. So I had in my mind that I would write out the words women of God really big. And originally I had this plan of writing like Bible verses about women in those letters. And the more I thought about that, the more I realized that that was just not, that probably wasn't going to go the way I thought it would. So I ended up just writing the names of some women of God in the letters. But I also ended up writing the Proverbs 31, the infamous Proverbs 31 passage in the background. And I wrote it out in pencil first to make sure it would fit. I also uh, was really nervous about that fitting in and looking okay. And I knew that if I did it, it would also like smear. Like I was worried about smearage if I wrote it first and then went over it in pen. So I started painting, and then as I started painting, it became very, very hard to see the pencil, which was good and bad. So it took a very long time for me to actually get this page written out because I wrote out this passage twice, essentially. But it turned out pretty well. There are a couple of places where it's harder to read than others. But I enjoyed doing it. I fit the entire passage minus the last two verses onto the page. I did not think about the fact that I had to punch holes in the side of it to bind it. So I did end up ruining the image and ruining the passage when I finally punched holes in it. It took me like 2 days to get over that and actually go ahead and punch it. but it was a fun journaling experience. If you're wondering as I'm writing it out now, the reason that I have that border around the edge is because that is what will fold over the cardstock. I have found so much more success with, instead of just gluing, trying to cut it to the correct size and just gluing it, but like wrapping it and folding it over. It looks a lot nicer, it looks a lot cleaner. So I've been using that method for more of my like recent notebooks. So that's why I cut this sheet of paper to have a border around it, and then I just kind of boxed out where the actual cover would be, which I should have, of course, given myself a little bit more margin on that left side for the holes, but it is what it is. Just a recap of the materials I used for this. Like I said, I have the watercolor brush pens. This is, I believe, Canson watercolor paper that I'm using to color on. I went over it with a Pigma Micron for the Bible verse, and I think it's a 0.5 in terms of the weight of that pen. And then I ended up using paint pens for the actual words. I thought about using gel pens, but I wasn't sure how well they would show up, and I wanted something that would really like pop off the page. It doesn't show up quite as well on camera when we get to that point, or even in pictures, but in person I actually really like the way that came out. I used a metallic gold to outline the words woman, women of God, and then I wrote the names of those women in white. And like I said, I thought it turned out well, but you guys can be the judge of it. And I don't really have anything else to say. If you have any questions or thoughts, any ideas, women that you want to learn about in this series, I'm always happy to hear from you guys. And I guess maybe I'll insert some music to take us to the end of the video. Thanks for watching, guys.